Hello and welcome to the Kerbal Space Program. Now, this isn't an official challenge or anything, it's just a challenge that I thought of that I thought might be fun to try. Because I was basically thinking, can I get to the moon and back using only solid rocket boosters? And from that I decided to try it. And this is currently my 5th complete redesign for the rocket, as well as a very high test number, because the way that I needed to do this that makes it easier, because solid rocket boosters, when they just fire and they go until they're out of fuel. So in order for it to work, I needed to test and kind of think about what exactly are my stages, such as how many stages are going to get me to orbit, which stage is going to land me, which one would cushion my landing, which one will launch me off of the moon once I'm landed. Just kind of each needs to be its own stage, and how much delta V I had to predict it, and then kind of fine tune it. And of course, this long line of small SRBs you see, each of them has a specific amount of solid fuel in it, solid rocket fuel, as well as a specific thrust to weight ratio, or a throttle control. And the reason I need to do this is so each has its own timer, each has its own amount of delta V it will produce. That way each of these kind of different stages I've created will be able to work. Now, I'm creating a node to go to the moon right now, and the node is set to the amount of delta V that the current SRB has. And what I just did is I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, because I need to make about 3 dozen orbits around the Kerbal for the moon to be in the right position, so there's no need to waste time making that many orbits. But there's the rocket to get there. Now I also have the next rocket is going to be to slow down to actually encounter the moon, because currently I'm doing a flyby. But the challenge is very interesting in how you actually have to create these different stages, and it almost seems like it'd be a good idea for a new person playing Kerbal Space Program to try and do this when they launch missions, is create small stages that they just use for one particular task. And if they have more fuel, then that's good. If they run out of fuel, they might be able to cut into the next stage. But it's all kind of dependent. It just creating different stages, like stage 1, get to 10 kilometers. Stage 2, get your apoapsis above 70. Stage 3, circularize the orbit, etc. And what's happening anyway, is I'm landing, which is one of the SRBs with a very high throttle drop. I believe it's at the throttle control is set to 10 versus the normal 100. And that's because I need to burn longer as I'm slowly falling, because if trying to do a suicide burn was a little too difficult, I find it easier to do a slow kind of gradual descent. Now, the reason I'm just kind of wobbling back and forth is to prevent myself from really moving, as well as keeping horizontal velocity minimalized. And the legs broke when I landed. Now, I think I can do better, because depending on how you determine a landing, like I could take off from that, but depending on how you classify what's a landing and what's a crash, then that could either be a crash or a successful landing. So I think I can do better and land without breaking any parts. So I try this again. I wait a little bit longer before I actually activate my engine. That way I'm a little bit closer to the ground before I run out of fuel, which means less drop, less gravity actually accelerating me, so the 2 little separatrons I have will be more effective. And this challenge was fun to challenge myself with, mostly because of some of the silly stuff that I had to do to try and figure out exactly how I wanted to design a vessel to do this. So there's the last kick, and I successfully land, except I think I broke 2 or 3 of the landing gear, but I still call that landed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just checking exactly which direction I need to fire in order to get back to Kerbal, because I have only 1 SRB left, 1200 units of delta V, which is way more than enough, but I need to be able to fire it in the right direction, otherwise I'll mess up. However, before I go back, I just want to show you some of the silly stuff that I ended up doing prior to this actual successful landing. So here's the previous attempt to the last rocket I was just showing you. And what was really fun about this was I was coming straight down toward the moon, and I would just fire off my SRB that had about 600 delta V, except it was full throttle. And when I fired it directly down, it would emphasize my horizontal velocity. So instead of coming straight down at the planet, it would appear that I would come straight down at the planet and kind of recoil from going straight at the planet to going really fast sideways. And what was fun about this was the close encounters that I kept getting, because I would start going sideways so quickly from having going straight down toward the planet. As you could see right there, I just barely missed that mountainside. And of course, here on another attempt with this design and trying to land this way, I just come straight toward the planet, drop my vertical velocity, and then I kind of skid across the surface of it. And there you can see the other SRB just flying off into the distance, probably going back into orbit. And here's another couple close encounters, where not as close as they could be, but still relatively close for how quickly I was moving. But it's still a very fun design to try and do this, and I think I might attempt to do this in the future. Whereas because my vertical velocity, because my vertical velocity is so extreme and I cancel it out so fast, it emphasizes my horizontal velocity in the orbit. So that's why I kind of skyrocket sideways, even though I don't have that much horizontal velocity. Because I'll have 700, 800 vertical velocity and only 100 to 200 horizontal velocity, but the horizontal velocity skyrockets to about 500 and gets emphasized when I cancel out that 600-700 vertical velocity. So it's neat how that actually works and how you can kind of almost slide into a planet in a sense that way. Anyhow, enough of the sliding into planets. Now this is my about fourth or fifth attempt at actually getting off the moon. I quick saved, and the reason for that is because it was tricky. As you can see, that line, my calculation line where I'm going, is juddering around everywhere, and that was because it was just hard to really, I had way more fuel than I needed basically, so it was hard to try and keep it balanced without actually reversing my orbit around Kerbal and then proceeding to completely miss the planet. Now I let out my parachute, and slowly am drifting back to Kerbal. Now Kerbal is strangely blocky for some reason, also oddly colored, but that might just be some rendering issue. Anyhow, Bob is successfully landed on the mountainside, and we will plant a flag labeling our success of 300 subscribers. A quick thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. I really do mean it. I never expected to get 300, especially with how I'm as reliable as an asymmetric rocket without SAS turned on. But I really do mean it. Thank you guys.